following program is intended for mature audiences.
Rudy's revelation.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. It is July 3rd. Tomorrow's the 4th. Happy Independence Day. I may or may not have a episode tomorrow. Still debating. So check in tomorrow every day, or check in every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. live stream on Rumble. Rudy's Revelation. All right, today we're going to get into a lot of news, a lot of job numbers, a lot of layoffs, trade deal with Vietnam, and artificial intelligence is now reading your mind. If we didn't have enough to worry about on that front. So we're going to break down about 30 headlines in the next hour or so. So stick with me. Let's get into the news. All right, we're going to start out here this morning with the Trump administration and the New York Times. Trump administration policy bill moves toward final House vote amid GOP resistance. In a marathon session, Republicans overcame conservative holdouts to bring President Trump's sweeping domestic policy bill to the House floor early Thursday. A final vote is still needed to approve the legislation. I was racing to get started on time this morning. My wife was home from work this morning, and she was kind of throwing a little bit of a wrench in the works. But here we are. It is 10 a.m. live on Rumble. So what the New York Times is saying, Trump is putting forth a policy bill, and it seems, of course, liberals don't mind a lot of spending, and I guess they didn't have a problem with that aspect of the bill, that in fact it's a budget bill. And so now the New York Times is focusing on policy. Well, here's the thing. It barely made it out of the Senate, this specific bill, and J.D. Vance had to cast the tie-breaking vote. Now it's in the House. We already have about 4 GOP defectors, including Thomas Massie, who are voting on ideological lines, and certainly on principle, which is great, but this bill must be passed today. So I don't mind if some strict conservatives voice their principle, but if they're going to defeat the bill, Trump's right, and there should be hell to pay, because we need the bill now, and I'm going to get into the reasoning why. First of all, we have the Seattle Times here. Microsoft to lay off about 9,000 employees in latest round. CBS News, layoffs reach highest level since 2020. New data shows. Here's why companies are cutting jobs. Well, I don't need to get into the story. I'm going to tell you why companies are cutting jobs. Artificial intelligence. So CBS dances around this fact quite a bit. But to be honest with you, that's not the reasoning why. Companies are laying off employees because they don't need employees. Daily Mail, shock job reports show worst employment drop in years and massive blow to Trump economy. As I previously said, is it the Trump economy? It's going to be the Trump economy, but his hands have been tied. Specifically, we have a problem with interest rates. Now, I got some more numbers here that unemployment is indeed dropping, which is a mixed bag, because that could mean that inflation is going back up. But the unemployment numbers have been roughly 4%, which isn't great. But since we're wrestling with inflation, we shouldn't really be paying too much attention to that number unless it goes above 5. Zero Hedge is reporting deep tri-state layoffs leave continuing jobless claims stuck at highest levels since 2021. And as I previously said, I think we're at 3.5, which is relatively high. I think it's maybe 4.2 now. 4.2, I think it is. Which isn't really terrible until it gets above 5, and I just explained there is the inflation factor in there. When inflation goes down, unemployment usually goes up. So we have to watch that, of course. But the silver lining is the economy added 147,000 jobs in June. Monthly unemployment rate dropped slightly to 4.1. As I said, I think it was 4.2, but it's still around the same place that it has been. Zero Hedge again, blowout June payrolls, 147,000 jobs added, smashing expectations. Unemployment rate drops to 4.1. And the reasoning, we're looking at this and reasoning smashing expectations because there was there was data coming out a couple of weeks ago that was looking at estimates and said the estimates were down 33,000 jobs, which was a bad indicator that we weren't going to have any job growth. So although we're counting on 250,000 jobs in growth each month, 147,000 still smashed expectations. Remember, we don't have any stimulus going on. We still have a high interest rate, and we don't have the federal spending because we're going through a budget process right now. Once that gets unleashed, we'll be off to the races. So we're waiting on this bill to pass, and we're also waiting on Jerome Powell to lower interest rates. Now we're at 2.1 or 2.3 inflation, which isn't terrible. It's right around target. What he's waiting for, is he just waiting for inflation to go up? Who knows? Well, some of the reason we're having issues in federal government, we have Fox News reporting disappointing DOGE. Federal workforce shrinking by just 1% shows bureaucracy's entrenchment. Experts call DOGE results disappointing as entrenched government positions prove difficult to eliminate despite Trump administration's efforts. Well, this is exactly what we've been talking about for some time, is that the liberal establishment has its people everywhere and they just refuse to leave. That's the problem with government employment. You go to get rid of somebody, they go, you can't fire me. So since when can't the chief executive fire people? Why is the public sector so much different than the private sector? PJ Media, despite being fired by Trump, many deep state subversives are still on the job, indeed. Politico, which profited handsomely from the deep state subsidies before Trump's second term began, reported happily on Monday that Trump has fired a host of Democratic appointees on independent boards and commissions across the government. But there's just one catch. Some of them are still working. It seems that many of them decried Trump's summary termination notices as illegal and made various attempts to remain at their posts, including filing lawsuits. We know this to be true. There's no doubt about that. And they're being aided and abetted by the liberal establishment. So there's free Democrat DNC attorneys lending legal services to these people just to undermine Trump and really the nation, or half of the nation, I should say, the people that voted for Trump. New York Times, Trump announces preliminary trade deal with Vietnam. The president said that he had agreed to initial trade terms with Vietnam, the second country to strike a limited deal after Mr. Trump threatened steep tariffs. what's going on here is the New York Times is trying to downplay every trade deal. Now, the trade deal we have with Vietnam and with the UK and some other countries, India, is better than it was, but it's always preliminary because the other countries don't want to slam the lid on what is worse for them. They want to leave it open, presumably leave it open for 3 more years. And then so when a new administration comes in, they can undo all these tariff deals. So let's go to the story. According to Mr. Trump, the deal imposes a 20% tariff on all imports from Vietnam and a 40% tariff on transshipping. That provision is aimed at addressing Trump administration criticisms that countries like Vietnam have become a channel for Chinese manufacturers to bypass U.S. tariffs and funnel goods to the United States, which is true. We're having a lot of issue with China using other countries to move their products through. And Vietnam uses a lot of Chinese parts, etc., in their products, which then they ship to the United States. Reuters, how China's new auto giants left GM, VW, and Tesla in the dust. BYD, Chery, and other Chinese car makers have reshaped global competition through their unprecedented agility and aid by Western governments and companies, transnational companies. They have found ways to develop new models in less than half the time it takes their foreign rivals, helping to drive explosive growth. However, they're not time tested. So what good is a car if in 2 years it breaks down? This is also a big headline. Bombshell CIA report exposes how Obama's team framed Trump. The new CIA assessment released this week is nothing short of a bombshell, a long overdue confirmation of what conservative media has been saying for years. The Obama administration, with the eager help of its top intelligence brass, orchestrated an unprecedented operation to cripple Donald Trump's presidency before it even began. This isn't some fevered speculation or partisan rumor. The CIA's own review lays out in damning detail how former CIA Director John Brennan, former DNI James Clapper, and former FBI Director James Comey took unusual and direct control over the infamous intelligence community assessment that became the cornerstone of the Russian collusion hoax. We also have the Federalist reporting on this as well. CIA review blasts John Brennan's role in launching collusion hoax. The intelligence community assessment weaponized by Democrats, corporate media, and this deep state to carry out the Russian collusion hoax into President Trump's first term was fueled by former Central Intelligence Agency Director John Brennan. Now a new Central Intelligence review that concludes that Brennan overrode internal concerns to claim that Russia interfered in the 2016 election. So there you have it. The June 2025 review commissioned by the Central Intelligence Agency Director John Radcliffe in May scrutinized the highest classified version of the December 2016 assessment entitled Russian Influence Campaign Targeting the 2016 U.S. Presidential Election. So even though other people in the CIA said, I don't know about this, doesn't seem tight, John Brennan overrode that and said, yes, there's Russian collusion, and had conversations with Congress people like Adam Schiff and telling them, yeah, it's there, the evidence is there, when it really wasn't. And they knew it wasn't. So it was a frame-up. So we have the New York Times again complaining that the Justice Department explores using criminal charges against election officials. Such a path could drastically raise the stakes for federal investigations or state or county officials, bringing the department and the threat of criminalization into the legal system. Senior Justice Department officials are exploring whether they can bring criminal charges against state or local election officials if the Trump administration determines they have not sufficiently safeguarded their computer systems, according to people familiar with the matter. The thing is, it's not just safeguarding computer systems. It's chain of custody with ballots, which is a big problem with mail-in ballots. And as we saw with the Chinese infiltration of ballots, where I'm not going to digress into that, I'll just get back to the story. The department's effort, which is still clearly in its early stages, is not based on new evidence, data, or legal authority. And see, that's where they trick you. It's not based on new evidence. It is based on new evidence, but it's based on the evidence that has always been there. According to the people, speaking on condition of anonymity, to describe internal discussions instead is driven by the substantiated argument made by many in the Trump administration that American elections are easy prey to voter fraud and foreign manipulation, these people say. Yes, to the latter, foreign manipulation. We just had that FBI report, which Christopher Wray tried to bury, about the Communist Chinese printing mail-in ballots and submitting them under fake voters, presumably fake voters. Also, that the elections are easy prey to voter fraud. The elections are easy prey to voter fraud because of mail-in ballots. It's a chain of custody issue. So all you do, if you need 10,000 more ballots, all of a sudden they just arrive by truck. The reason Trump got elected was, and I also learned a lot of details about this watching Art of the Surge on Fox Nation, which I, suggest you check it out. I thought it was really good. In any case, it was done by Justin Wells, which was Tucker Carlson's producer. But it was a very good program. In any case, what we learned was that the voter integrity groups in each state that were tied to the Trump campaign, but specifically in swing states and states they needed to win, was very effective. They were there with lawyers ready to file and did file many suits at the very time on election day, during election, and were there also to repel the introduction of strange truckloads of ballots. That when they saw the lawyers there, the trucks pulled up and then they turned around. Just the News is reporting SCOTUS turns down cases on conservative meme firing, COVID censorship of RFK Jr., and eviction ban. My big problem with this one, of course, is the eviction ban because it's unconstitutional. And Justices Clarence Thomas and Neil Gorsuch dissented from the court denying review of COVID eviction moratorium challenge against Los Angeles, saying they would have reviewed whether a policy barring landlords from evicting tenants for non-payment of rent affects a physical taking under the takings clause. Four justices must agree to grant review. So although Amy Coney Barrett just recently threw us a win, she's back on the deciding thing, siding with the liberal establishment that how can the Biden administration insist on a eviction moratorium for as long as they did. It was unconstitutional. There were people that were affected certainly by COVID, but the reaction to the pandemic was part of the issue. I mean, you don't let people go to work, they can't pay rent. So it initiated a terrible cycle. But after all, everybody knew that it was just a test. It was a test for the big one, which is coming. The Federalist has the headline, Britain shows how the bar for assisted suicide keeps getting lower. Britain's parliament had voted to take a single step towards enshrining assisted suicide into law with the narrow passage of the Terminally Ill Adults End of Life Bill, known as the Ledbetter Bill. On June 20th, the United Kingdom stands at the precipice of adopting state-sponsored death. The bill, if ultimately enacted, would allow doctors to dispense lethal drugs to patients deemed to have less than 6 months to live. And the key provision there is deemed to have 6 months to live. Deemed by whom is the question. I don't want anybody to deem me of having 6 months to live and then they could inject drugs into me. Can they do this? Can they do this without consent? A lot of times when you're sick and terminally ill, you may not have the ability to consent. So who's going to consent for you? And like I said, and who's going to deem you have 6 months to live? There are plenty of people who were given 6 months to live and they've been alive years later. PJ Media. European Union elite doubles down on deadly decarbonization efforts. We all know what this is about. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is once again stubbornly committing to pushing decarbonization. A goal which is deadly, devastating, and based on unscientific climate alarmism. It is. It is like aliens have come down to Earth and they want to get rid of everything that makes Earth a habitable environment for humans. And PJ Media states, the first key fact here is that carbon is the essential building block of life. Indeed it is. One American News is reporting, stay with me now, moving on to the next article. One American News is reporting, Musk applauds Trump's foreign policy peace efforts successfully resolved serious conflicts around the world. The thing is with Elon Musk is now he's pulling back a little bit. He was really mad at this big, beautiful bill, and maybe he was reminded what it's like to put together budgets in Congress and how herding cats to vote for bills is devastating, and most people that are needed to vote for the bill hold out in efforts of extortion. They want money. As we just saw, I reported yesterday that what's-her-face in Alaska was holding out for more money for her state, Senator Murkowski. Certainly not surprising there. Let's move on to the next headline. That is not it. I have to fix something here. I want to go to this. I want to go to this. I want to go to this article here. I don't really quote little sites or source little sites like Hyperfresh, but they do have some corroborated information here that I'm going to go to. So Hyperfresh is reporting alleged Idaho shooters. TikTok mentions fear furries in Oregon selling. So this is Wes Rowley's TikTok account. According to these screenshots, Rowley has allegedly a brony, a boy interested in My Little Pony, and used hashtag furry. It also had pictures of him in, I guess, furry costume. Rolly's TikTok account has become a focal point. Its bio with eerie phrase, "My tick is to make fear," hinted at a desire to provoke terror. The inclusion of hashtag Fury suggested ties to the subculture where people adopt animal-inspired personas. They not just that, but they dress up as animals and then have sex. Most shockingly, hashtags like "I sell organs" and "I sell organs black market" pointed to claims of illegal organ trafficking. Beyond TikTok, they go on to say, Rolly's final Instagram story posted just before the ambush showed him in blackface paint, camouflage gear, and a bandolier, a chilling image shared by the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office during a press conference. Those posts show a picture of premeditation. And of course, my point has always been, why, what is the catalyst that gets people who may be mentally disturbed, or what is the catalyst that gets them mentally disturbed or nurtures their mental destabilized state and or gets them to act? Could it be somebody online? Could it be sock puppets? Could it be AI chatbots? Rolly, a drifter who had been in Idaho for about a year after stints in Arizona, California, and Oklahoma, lived out of his car. He reportedly dreamed of becoming a firefighter but faced rejection, possibly over his height, a detail that sparks speculation about his motives. With no criminal record, only minor police encounters over vehicle issues, Rolly's descent in violence have left many baffled. And that is indeed why we're talking about it, is because it fits the same profile ever since Columbine, where kids that are involved in tech, online gaming, online chat groups, what have you, a lot of people have mental instability, drug use, pharmaceutical antidepressants, and then there's always a trigger that gets them to go to a certain place with a gun and actually commit acts of violence or be there as a patsy, what have you. Speaking of violence, WTOP News congressional intern killed in Northwest D.C. Eric Tarpinian Jakim, 21, of Granby, Massachusetts, was an intern for Kansas Representative Ron Estes and was fatally shot Monday near Mount Vernon Square Metro Station in Northwest D.C. Was he targeted? Was this a murder by leftists? A few other people were wounded. It's unclear whether these people were acquaintances of Mr. Tarpinian Jakim. It's hard to say. But it seems like the left is going crazy and committing violence. Now, this guy in Idaho wasn't a conservative because he wouldn't dress up and call himself furry, a furry, and have all these other weird fetishes. Let's get back to some hard news, though. We have Reuters here. Hamas seeks ceasefire guarantees as scores more killed in Gaza. As I previously mentioned, I told you Hamas would not accept the ceasefire, so they want more. So are they going to reject the ceasefire? Hard to say. More headlines from Just the News. Trump administration approves California disaster funding relief request over Los Angeles riots. Small Business Administration on Tuesday agreed to help cover some of the costs imposed on Los Angeles after riots broke out in the city over immigration raids last month by approving disaster relief funding. California Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom requested the funding relief after weeks of riots, which resulted in over $1 billion in damages. Hundreds were also arrested in looting and vandalism. Governor Newsom And I think this is by Kelly Loeffler. Governor Newsom's, I think she's head of the SBA. Governor Newsom allowed a mob to rampage Los Angeles, standing with violent rioters, paid protesters are criminal illegal aliens over law-abiding citizens, Loeffler said. Despite an estimated $1 billion in damages, he refused federal relief for weeks, insisting that the riots were peaceful, even as small business owners stood in the rubble. So he wants the money. That's the thing with California. They don't do anything to prevent forest fires. And then at least with the Palisades, it was confusing how limited the response efforts were. And then in cases like this with the riots, they allow the riots to happen, and then they don't want to admit defeat right away or admit they were wrong, so they wait. And now, while the attention is off those riots that were happening in LA, now he files, or the state of California files for disaster relief when the disaster was of his own making. Fox News is reporting Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene to introduce bill requiring proof of citizenship to vote, new census that only counts citizens. Greene spoke to Fox News Digital about the measure, which President Donald Trump supports. In other headlines from the New York Times, a judge rejects Trump's attempt to stop asylum claims at the border. The judge wrote that neither the Constitution nor federal immigration law gave the president the authority to adopt an alternative immigration system. Now, I don't know if this is confused by the judge or confused by the New York Times, but it goes on to say, the court recognizes that the executive branch faces enormous challenges in the preventing and deterring unlawful entry into the United States and is adjudicating the overwhelming backlog, and that's the point, of asylum claims of those who have entered the country, he wrote. But neither the Constitution nor current law governing the asylum seekers, Judge Moss wrote, could be read to grant the president or his delegates authority to adopt an alternative immigration system which supplants the statutes of the Congress as enacted. Here's the issue. Is Biden, the Democrats changed the law that you could declare asylum to any Border Patrol agent or whatever, when the law used to say that if you wanted to declare asylum, you needed to declare it at a U.S. embassy or at a point of entry into the United States. You couldn't just cross the border illegally and go, I'm being persecuted in my country of origin. Despite the sweeping terms of the order, Judge Moss postponed them from taking effect for 2 weeks to allow for appeal that will be appealed. As the administration has sought maximum authority to curb immigration, the matter appeared likely to eventually reach the Supreme Court. Trump administration filed an appeals hours after the judge's ruling. Like I said, I don't know if it's in this bill, but hopefully they change it back to where if you want to claim asylum, that you have to do it by going to an embassy or a point of entry. You can't cross the border illegally, and then if you get caught, you're like, I'm claiming asylum. What if you don't get caught? Will you still claim asylum? And we have to understand that 80 to 90% of asylum claims are rejected because there's no proof that you're going to be tortured or whatever. You know, the law specifically was designed to help people escaping brutal authoritarian regimes like Venezuela. But you still would have to prove that the government considered you opposition and that your life was at risk. Most people couldn't do that because most of the asylum claims are false. And the liberal establishment got to the immigrants and got to them and said, well, when you reach the borders, claim asylum because then you get extra due process. You follow? And that's the due process that they're talking about. So that doesn't work, though, if you were a got-away You're found to be, this is the thing with Obregon Garcia. He's found to be in the country illegally, never claimed asylum. He doesn't deserve more due process. It is returning asylum seekers, not just single adults, but families too, to countries where they face persecution or torture. Not true. Without allowing them to invoke protections Congress has provided. And they're talking about people from countries of Afghanistan, Cuba, Egypt, Peru, and Turkey. Yeah, I mean, it might as well be everywhere, right? Ridiculous. These lawyers said some were subjected to traditional torture at the hands of their government. Not really. Stephen Miller, the White House chief of staff and architect of Mr. Trump's immigration policy, said on social media that the judge's orders was an attempt to circumvent the Supreme Court's will and carve out a protected global class entitled to admission to the United States. Yeah, but also this is just not true. Like I said, is like if you're claiming asylum, you're allowed to do so, and you get extra due process to figure out whether your asylum claim is valid or it's not. However, asylum claims can't be admitted to millions pouring over the border illegally. And even the New York Times admitted that there was a great backlog. I mean, all asylum claims that were made to Border Patrol should summarily be rejected, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, whether that's law or not, I don't know. I don't know the law in this instance. Reuters, many lifetimes of commitment. Richard Gere vows to keep fighting for Tibetan cause. Well, isn't that nice? We haven't heard you, Richard Gere, in a long time talk about free Tibet. As a lot of other people's, there were bumper stickers all during the 70s. Free Tibet, free Tibet, free Tibet. Then all of a sudden, China didn't want to see that anymore, and that stopped. This Richard Gere statement and other people that support a sovereign Tibet are circling around the issue because the Dalai Lama is turning 90. And the problem is, you should all watch the Steven Spielberg movie Kundun if you don't know how the Dalai Lama is chosen. But it's a very mystical process. And so they're worried about the new Dalai Lama, because this Dalai Lama has been the Dalai Lama since communist rule. Or since the communists took over Tibet, certainly. So the BBC is reporting that they visited the heart of Tibet resistance as showdown looms between Dalai Lama and China. And the reason they say Dalai Lama and China is because of what I just said, is that the Dalai Lama passes and there's a new Dalai Lama. You know the communists are either going to have a hand in the naming of the new Dalai Lama or forbid or prohibit a naming of a new Dalai Lama. The monastery in China's southwestern Sichuan province has been at the center of the Tibetan resistance for decades. The world learned the name in the late 2000s as Tibetans set themselves on fire there in defiance of Chinese rule. Nearly 2 decades later, the Kurdi monastery still worries Beijing. And some of the monks said they do not have a good heart. Everyone can see it. Be careful. People are watching you, referring to the communist Chinese. We are being followed by 8 unidentified men. Even saying a few words to us in public could get him in trouble, but he appears willing to take the chance. Things here are not good for us, he says quietly. Well, of course, heed his warnings. If we're ever ruled by the communist Chinese, what life would be like. Certainly wouldn't be free. but it may very well be a technological takeover. Fox News is reporting robots are taking over Uber Eats deliveries. Is your sitting next? Robots are taking over Uber Eats deliveries. Autonomous delivery robots are expanding. Here's how they work and where they're headed. Then we have this other disturbing headline from Forbes. A psychologist explains what mind-reading AI can do to us. Meta, the social media conglomerate, recently published a paper highlighting advancements in decoding brain activity, particularly in visual perception. Its research shows a significant leap in real-time decoding of visual processes in the human brain using magnetoencephalography, which offers a much higher temporal resolution compared to traditional MRI. Simply put, Meta is now capable of visualizing with perception what a person is looking at simply based on brain activity. So AI can do this also. A breakthrough suggests not only improvement in interpreting high-level visual features, but also paves the way for more sophisticated AI systems capable of seeing through our eyes in real time. Decoding the brain. Now, if you didn't know, Obama invested billions into brain mapping research, specifically to aid to this. What's going to happen when a robot that's 100 times smarter than you can also read your mind? HT Tech, mind-reading AI is no longer science fiction, as Centaur AI predicts human choices with scary accuracy. Holy fucking shit. Think about it. Robots that are 100 times smarter than you that can read your mind. If any of you are Dungeons and Dragons fans out there, the game, the role-playing game, where they had demons had this capability in Dungeons and Dragons of not only reading your mind, but making you go crazy. And if you've been following the show this week, certainly have been covering stories that had to deal with that. CNN, this man says ChatGPT sparked a spiritual awakening. His wife says it threatens their marriage. I bet it does. And I guess that's it for us. Finished a little bit early today, which is good. I got some real paying work to do. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, share the podcast, leave a comment if you dare. Join me every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. live stream on Rumble. I may or may not have an episode tomorrow. I have to figure it out. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see what the morning brings. So stay tuned for that. It is July 3rd. If I don't talk to you, have a great Independence Day weekend. Stay away out of crowded metro centers. I don't know, there were these reports of pathogens being released and other terror or mass shootings or things that may happen. So not only self-awareness, but environmental awareness. You need to be aware. So stay aware. Remember, also, you're under attack psychologically and biologically. Stay hip to the trick. Hopefully, I'll see you tomorrow. If not, I'll see you Monday. Have a great 4th of July. Respect.
You're crazy. You're crazy, man. You're crazy. I like you, but you're crazy.
The New World Order